Well, so glad to have everybody here. I want to welcome you to the 2024 Sun Corridor, Inc. Annual Luncheon, and this is actually a celebration of our 20th anniversary. So you get to eat while I talk. We have a jam-packed agenda, so if you can dive into your salads and enjoy, we'll start the program here while you're eating. Year after year, Sun Corridor puts on this luncheon, and we bring in world-class speakers. We bring in an excellent opportunity for networking, and this year is just the same. Really excited about what we have planned for today. So, the past few years, we've seen strong economic activity, and both in Tucson and in the Southern Arizona region. And I think, you likely know about some of the new and expanding companies like MHIRJ, SkyWest, Belden, Microstar, and Ascent Aviation, among others. And we've had some great successes here in Southern Arizona amidst significant publicity about the economic and lifestyle assets that we have here in Tucson and Southern Arizona. What a great place we get to live in, right? So just some of the few things that people are starting to notice how great Tucson is. And so here are some things that have recently come out in the last few months. Tucson is a top U.S. city in the West for Gen Z. I'm sure there's a lot of Gen Zers here in the house today. LinkedIn ranked Tucson #1 growing market for college grads. And CBRE ranked Tucson a number 15 up-and-coming market for tech talent. Pretty incredible, right? So these are significant rankings, and they put us on the map for talent, the talent that we have, the talent that we're bringing in. And in fact, in the 20 years since this organization was founded, we've proven to be a sustainable economic development team with a pipeline of projects that can benefit our regions for years to come. So we anticipate continuing this upward trajectory that we're on and continuing in this activity. So we'll focus on securing new companies while keeping an eye on you, our local companies. Because we know that we're bringing in new, but we're also expanding who's here and leveraging our growth opportunities that we have right here. And the economic landscape continues to evolve at a rapid pace. I'm sure that's not news to you. Today, Joe Snell is going to talk about, give us an update of what's going on here at Sun Corridor, but also some insight that we've received from site selection trends and generally what we're seeing now and into the future here in our region. So we have a great lunch program for you today. It includes hearing from an incredible Mexico expert, Geronimo Gutierrez Fernandez. As a former Mexican ambassador to the United States, Geronimo, we are honored to have you here. And we're so looking forward to hear what you have to say about the U.S.-Mexico relationship, the trends, the challenges, and the opportunities. So what does all of that mean for our business today and in the future? But before we get going, I want to thank our sponsors that are in the room today for this luncheon. The first is Schnitzer Properties. Thank you so much for being a title sponsor. And I have to shout out my team, Tucson Electric Power. Thank you. And we have a list of supporting sponsors that include Arizona State University, Cox Communications, Pima Community College, Tucson Airport Authority, TMC Health, Visit Tucson, Wells Fargo, and additional support by the Arizona Commerce Authority and Born Partners, Born Companies. Let's give them a round of applause. So next, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Sun Corridor Inc.'s Chairman Circle and Board of Directors. I'd like to have everybody that's on the board just stand where you're at so we can honor you. Thank you so much for the work that you do. You've been seeing the names kind of scroll through on the screens today, Without the support of our leaders from private and public organizations, we could not achieve the success that we've already experienced. And with the group and their efforts, we're aggressive and we're effective as a regional team in attracting projects and landing those projects. And I'd like to ask the Sun Corridor Chairman Circle, we already did that part. Successful growth for our region means public and private entities working together. And our board is a solid representation of that. But I'd also like to recognize elected officials who are here with us today. So as I call your name, please stand as a group briefly, and we'll acknowledge you. First, U.S. Congressman Juan Ciscomani. And Juan's going to come up in a minute for a presentation here. And representing the office of the U.S. Senator Mark Kelly, we have Carla Avalos. Representing the office of Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, we have Marisol Flores Aguirre and Ian O'Grady. And Marisol is also going to come up for a presentation in a minute here. Arizona State Representative Betty Viejas. Arizona State Senator Priya Sundaresan. Commissioner Leah Marquez Peterson of the Arizona Corporation Commission. And from Pima County, we have District 4 Supervisor Steve Christie. And from District 3, Supervisor Dr. Sylvia Lee. And of course, Administrator Jan Lesher. We also have the City of Tucson Mayor, Regina Romero. And the Town of Sahuarita Mayor, Tom Murphy. And the Town of Marana Council Member, John Officer. So Marisol, I'd love to invite you up to, I'm sorry, I apologize. Congressman Ciscomani, we're going to start with you. We'd love to have you come up for a brief presentation.
What do you want?
Wherever is good, yeah.
Take my napkin with me.
We're improvising today, so.
Well, I won't take even more than a minute. I just want to thank everyone for being here, for celebrating business, for celebrating success, celebrating our community. And today we're also celebrating 20 years of Sun Corridor. So I want to congratulate all those that have made this happen, both that are serving on the board today, those that have the legacy of having served on the board for a number of years, members, those that have been attending these lunches for a long time in this location. I think it's a known place for Sun Corridor as well. So I'll go to you to present the certificate, but Joe, do you mind joining us here on stage as well? Now, of course, Joe is now wearing fitted suits, and he looks so handsome. He just came back from Europe. He's got those European shoes. How do we not bring him on stage? I mean, look at this guy. So let me go over there real quick.
Keep you around for a while.
That's right, that's right. They know how to invite. So just want to, it's a certificate of congressional recognition. A certificate of congressional recognition for all the work that Sun Corridor has done.
I'll switch sides.
For all these years to the two leaders here. So we have this for them. It's got Susan's name on it because she's the real boss around here. But we just want to congratulate everyone. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, Marisol, I would love to have you come up and do your presentation as well.
Awesome. Next time I wear flats, I want to jump on stage, but you can't do it with heels. I want to say muy buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Marisol Flores Aguirre, and I am the Southern Arizona Director and Senior Advisor to the Arizona-Mexico Commission in the Office of Governor Katie Hobbs. On behalf of the Governor, congratulations to Sun Corridor on this milestone achievement. The Governor had the opportunity to sit down with Joe and his team not that long ago, and she was very impressed to learn about all of the economic impact and work they're doing to advance economic development in the region, and she sends her best to you and the team. I also think I saw Representative Sandoval here somewhere, all the way down here from Phoenix, so I want to just say hi to the representative, Mariana Sandoval. There she is, hi. So thank you for joining us. And very quickly, would like to read a commendation that we do have prepared for Sun Corridor, and it says, "Be it known to all that I, Katie Hobbs, Governor of the State of Arizona, do hereby offer my sincere congratulations to Sun Corridor on 20 years of exemplary service to Pima, Pinal, Santa Cruz, Cochise, and Cochise County, as well as the broader mega region. Your steadfast dedication to fostering economic development through strategic business attraction and investment has been pivotal in advancing the economic vitality of our state. Your commitment to regional economic development has enhanced the prosperity of the Southern Arizona region and positioned it as a competitive player in the national landscape. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to our communities and for your invaluable contributions to our shared economic future." Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Joe's going to jump up. The acoustics right here are much better.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Really honored to receive those commendations. So lastly, I wanted to acknowledge our Sun Corridor Inc. staff, who is small but mighty. So if you all could stand as well, we'd like to honor you for all the work you've done today and throughout the year. If you've had the opportunity to work with this staff, you know that they are professional, they are experts, and they are getting things done. So really appreciate getting to work with all of you. So finally today, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Sun Corridor Inc. Pretty incredible. And most of you know that the organization was founded as TRIO back in 2004. And at that time, a Blue Ribbon committee of leaders recognized that a regional approach to economic development was really critical. So fast forward to today, you can see that a strong regional approach leads to sustainability, strength, and success. Why is that? Well, because the marketplace of business and site selectors demand it. Business crosses jurisdictional lines, right? Employees can live in any part of this region regardless of where they work. So we win together as one. And in recognition of Sun Corridor Inc.'s success, I'd like to recognize a powerful group of former chairs who are here today. Judy Rich, recently retired President and CEO of TMC Health. Steve Egan, formerly with Raytheon Missiles and Defense. And Lisa Lavallo of Cox Communications. Thank you so much for your leadership. Really appreciate your continued support. They continue to be involved, continue to be leaders in this organization. So now, please enjoy your luncheon, and we're going to get things going in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Buenos dias. Thank you, Juan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Snell. I'm President and CEO of Sun Corridor, Inc., and I'm really pleased to report to you that our economy is healthy and our future is bright. Yeah, that's great. You know, companies are profitable today. Unemployment in the Tucson area is at a historic low, and we're creating manufacturing jobs at a pace that exceeds both Arizona and Phoenix. That's great news. You know, last week I was in the Netherlands and Belgium on a trade mission with Arizona Commerce Authority, and we were busy meeting with technology companies to position this market to tap into the expanding semiconductor ecosystem. And I can tell you, I haven't been quite sure how we fit into this, but walking away from those meetings in Europe, I can tell you that we're positioned to be a big player in this. And so it's got me very excited. We're fortunate today when I look at our pipeline to realize it's very diverse. It's full of companies representing industries like aerospace and clean energy and yes, semiconductor, battery companies. And I look at this healthy pipeline that we have, and I realize we're strong, but it wasn't always like this. As it was mentioned, I'm thrilled to be celebrating our 20th anniversary, but boy, I tell you, 20 years ago, the pipeline looked very different. And there's nothing wrong with call center jobs, but that was 90% of the pipeline when this organization was created. And the wages just aren't there with those type of industries. So we've come a long way in 20 years. So we're very proud of this 20-year history. I can tell you that many people were betting that we wouldn't last 3 years. I looked at Jan Lesher, I looked at the mayor, we go way back. And I'm serious, there was an active pool out there in the community of people betting on how long we would make it. Part of it is the reason is that we were born out of past failures. This community, prior to TRIO at the time, had saw multiple regional economic development groups just come and go. And I think the longest lasting economic development group before we came along was about 6 years. So they had good reason to bet against it. So we're thrilled we've made it this long and we're able to survive. A lot's occurred in this last 20 years. We've had a lot of successes along the way, some challenges, and frankly, some missed opportunities. But we have made progress along the way. I was going to take some time to tell you about all the good things and all that, but we put together a short video that I think will tell the story much better than I possibly could. So if you'll indulge me.
For 20 years, Sun Corridor Inc. has been a driver for our regional economy, bringing jobs and businesses to our thriving community. We're proud of the work we've done with our partners, and the numbers don't lie. One ranking after another points to all the reasons Southern Arizona is a great place for Gen Z, college grads, tech talent, and other key demographics. In 2004, the community mandated a regional approach to economic development for TRIO and later for Sun Corridor. Our number one goal since then has been to strengthen Southern Arizona's economic foundation. We started by developing a comprehensive economic blueprint, leading to other strategic plans that have turned to action, addressing all the issues that impact our economy. Along the way, major brand names and corporations have selected Southern Arizona to expand their operations and grow their businesses. We've worked closely with everyone who has a stake in our community, businesses, government leadership, our incredible educational institutions, to show the business world that we have the talent and that their companies can thrive here. In 2015, we changed our name to reflect the importance of our business corridor, one of the 10 fastest growing in the U.S. That same year, Caterpillar's decision to locate here was transformational. And while great companies are coming here, great companies are staying here, strengthening our foundation as we continue to build a thriving economy. We've never been shy. Remember the cactus we sent to Amazon? Just a year later, Amazon built a major fulfillment center in Tucson, eventually leading to 5 locations in the region. Sun Corridor and Tucson International Airport are partnering to create a center where business, people, ideas, and infrastructure all converge. And while COVID changed many economic drivers, new industries and opportunities are emerging for Southern Arizona. Looking ahead to the next 20 years, Sun Corridor will keep working closely with site selectors to understand what we must do as a region to stay on their radar. We are laser focused on a future of strategic growth and investment in Southern Arizona, bringing more companies and jobs to build a healthy and vibrant economy. We look forward to continuing to build a bright future for Southern Arizona.
Thank you, and thank to all of you. This is Sun Corridor is a community organization. We've all worked together to accomplish some really important things, and the video did a good job of talking about it. So we are proud of what we've accomplished the last 20 years, but the real importance is what we do in the next 20 years. Past is the past, future is the future. And it got us thinking that the last several years have caused really fundamental shifts in the economy, and it's changed the way we, not only what we're competing for, but how we compete. COVID upended everything, and it's just never been the same since about 2019. So this last year, we embarked on an effort to better understand our competitiveness, to understand how the leaders perceive us and how competitive we are. So a year ago, I tasked our Executive Vice President, Susan Dumont, to go out and gather feedback on the perception of our competitiveness. The process that we went through was both internal and external. Internally, meaning we had a ton of focus groups, and we met with many of you in the room. We met with hundreds of people over that year. So we wanted to solicit your feedback. We also did a lot of one-on-one meetings and surveys over the course of the year. That was the internal perspective. The external perspective, we went out and talked to influencers. In our world, they're called site selectors. Consultants that recommend where companies either relocate or expand. And I think when we looked at the results of this year-long effort, it was really important and unique when the findings from the internal audience and the external audience matched up. So I do want to take a few minutes, and we're on a tight time frame, to walk you through some of the highlights of this year-long perception study. The full report will be available on our website, and you can go through it. So the first thing we can look at is, did you pull it up? Yeah, the perceptions of our strengths and assets. And I can tell you the very positive news in this is that our perceived assets and strengths far outnumber our challenges. I really expected that from an internal audience. We all live here, we know what a wonderful place it is. But what shocked me through this process is that the outsiders had such a positive view of us. And I can tell you when I arrived 20 years ago, we did the same perception study, and those results were inverted. Locally, we felt good about our community, but the outside influencers did not feel as good about us as a region. So we've done something right the last 20 years for them to feel so good about us. The overall feedback, I will tell you, from the site selectors, the outsiders, and really the insiders as well, is that we're on the cusp of the market to have great things happen. Frankly, over and over, we kept hearing that there was a sense that we're poised to be the next growth market in the Western United States, and that was great to see. A couple things that really stood out in this process. Everybody we talked to raved about our downtown. They said it's amazing. They loved it. The site selectors, we had a group of 6 or 7 of them in. They demanded they stay downtown. But it wasn't just them. We've been on the road talking to site selectors, and everybody knows about the renaissance of Tucson's downtown. Fletcher, you've done a good job. Mayor, you've done a good job. Because I can tell you that when I first arrived, we were shipping these guys out of downtown and coming up in the foothills because it really wasn't that great. So we've done some amazing work. But that stood out as the #1 positive through all this process. Not surprising to me, both the University of Arizona and Pima Community College stood out as absolute assets for this community. The U of A as a research university was cited again and again. Pima Community College, specifically the centers of excellence, are being seen as a true gem for us. So they're critical for our future. Another positive for this market is we're growing. We have a growing population, and that is a huge asset. Remember, markets that see outmigration don't have a chance because it is all about talent. Talent drives all market decisions. Companies want to know if they can attract talent, recruit talent, grow talent, and if you have a population that is exiting, there's no chance at it, and you don't have a chance. Another big asset is our proximity to Mexico, seen very favorably, both internal and external, seen as a huge asset and a game changer for us if we do it right. Said earlier, Mexico has long been Arizona's top trading partner. It is now the United States' top trading partner. We see a massive influx of companies that are considering all of North America, but Mexico is very important to us. We see the de-investment out of China, and it could be a big boom for us. But it also gets us to realize that we need to develop a viable economic strategy and just not reliance on our wonderful cultural connections. And frankly, that's why we have our keynote speaker here today, is to begin this. I'm pleased to announce that Sun Corridor is launching I call it a tiger team of top-level players to help develop a comprehensive economic strategy with Mexico. And we began this process last spring by signing an MOU with Global Sonora, our counterpart in the state of Sonora, in the spring. Our efforts since that time have been, looking at binational marketing efforts, working as one group. But we need to build on this. And many of you in this room will need to be participants on developing this strategy. Frankly, we're going to need the help of the mayor leading this, Jan, Pima County leading this, and Congressman, we definitely need your help. Marisol, everybody to help put this on the map for us. Mayor Romero just returned from Mexico City. I've been texting with her, but she, if you don't know, not only represented Tucson and Arizona, but really one of 9 people to represent the United States at the inauguration of the new Mexican president, Sheinbaum. Great. Mayor, we're going to put you to work and tap into that, okay? I know we want to hear more about that, but thank you. I will just say this. Our efforts in defining a viable economic strategy with Mexico can help define us for the next 50 years. So that's the good news. And although most of the news, the majority of the news was positive in this study, there are some perceptions that require our attention, some gaps. Both internal and external audiences believe that our infrastructure, especially our roads, are subpar and need addressing. Okay? I think we're talking among the family, and we know that we've got to still continue to address our roads, and there's some plans out there, but that's good. But I'm a little worried that the outsiders could see it as much as we could. We live here, we drive them on a day, but this is something we're going to have to address. The other thing worth noting is the outside influencers specifically noted that it appeared that we're lacking in adequate plans to address our infrastructure. Remember, we know that's probably not the case. We have the plans, but it's the perceptions on the outside. So it's something I think we need to dive into and really address. Second issue, one of the key issues we face is not having enough large tracts of industrial land available to the market. They're not matching what we're seeing in our pipeline. Many of the projects we're seeing are requiring 3 to 1,000 acres tracts of land under one ownership. And frankly, we just don't have it. We don't have it. We have a much higher percentage of our key land is owned by the state than other areas around the state. So we have too much land that's in the hands of state land. And we have got to make a change there, because plain and simple, we're missing opportunities that are just flowing through here, woodland here, but they don't find the land available and they move on. They're not going to wait for us to string together parcels. So I ask many of our partner organizations, our groups that focus on policy, we need your help to get some of this land that's in state land's hands transferred into private ownership, or we're going to miss opportunities. Another issue we have got to address that I highlighted is an issue that could really hamper our ability to compete, and that's our shortage of physicians. We have an acute shortage of physicians in critical areas. And although the nation, Arizona, and Phoenix all face shortage as well, the crisis is much more acute in Tucson than it is in those markets. So we have got to address this. If they don't get health care and they don't find that it's a community with adequate physician help, we're not going to win. So in an effort to address this, I've asked Judy Rich, mentioned former chair of Sun Corridor and retired CEO of TMC, to spearhead an effort to recruit physicians to the market. Judy is putting together, as we speak, players from area hospitals, CEOs from area hospitals, physician groups, medical schools, Pima County, and others to address this issue. Judy, it's like the old Godfather movie. When you thought you're out, we're bringing you back in, but thank you. I think that's good. And then finally, and I'm just hitting the highlights, this really stood out on the local surveys we did in the focus groups. It came back to us over and over that we have way too many business groups, that we have competing business groups, programmatically doing the same things. And I looked at it, and yes, we have over 20 related business groups doing some form of economic development. So the feedback was that we have to better align these groups to create a unified voice. It was noted through all these surveys that there's too much duplication and that this collective voice has been diluted, and that dilution is hampering our ability to influence, in particular, our federal partners and state partners in bringing solutions back. For example, Sun Corridor was in Washington, D.C. with a delegation just earlier this year, and we were advocating for some investment for Southern Arizona. And Senator Kelly did not mince words. He said, really appreciate you coming out, but I'm meeting with groups every day. You guys really need to figure this out and get back on the same page so you come in unified. So he noted that, and we saw that. So it's an issue that I think is plaguing that. I'd like to real quickly bring up Michael Guyman, President and CEO of the Tucson Metro Chamber. Michael, come on up here. Hi, my friend.
Hello, my friend.
Michael and I worked together, 10, 15 years? So we are friends. So I'm pleased to give you some information today. You know, in an effort to address these concerns, I am absolutely proud to announce that Sun Corridor and the Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce have agreed to explore an alliance between the two largest organizations in Southern Arizona, business organizations. Both organizations feel that the timing is absolutely right to explore a bold move like this to gain a unified voice and bolster our competitiveness. I will say, I don't want to go on too much about this, I remember when chambers of commerce, I'm old enough, and one of our staff people asked, I remember when chambers of commerce and economic development groups were splitting. They were all going their own separate ways, and that was the late 80s and early 90s. I can tell you today, they're coming back together at a rapid rate across the country for this very reason. It's not a cost savings. It's 1 and 1 can't equal 0.5. 1 and 1's got to be 3. It is about unification. And I heard something very, I thought, I'm going to steal it. John Winchester, he's out there somewhere. I heard him say something about this, and it was great. 5 fingers are not as powerful as 1 fist. So we're going to take that approach. Michael, you have anything to add?
Thank you, Joe. Joe, thank you so much. Thank you for your friendship and the trust that we built over the many years. Thank you. Well, hello. So the Tucson Metro Chamber has been around for 128 years. And in a variety of forms, it's been the voice of business for this region. And you know, we boldly advocate, as a lot of people in this room do, for a stronger economy because we know that as we build the economy, we build opportunities for the citizens and economic prosperity throughout the region. I recently met with many of my colleagues across the country, particularly those that are focused on and have gone through the process and the exercise of merging or aligning. And every single one of them talked about, and Joe mentioned this, a single, stronger, unified voice. They talked about less duplication, especially as it relates to attractions and retention of companies. And they also talked about the greater depth of services and programs that can be offered to our small businesses here in Tucson. So the due diligence period we're entering into, we're going to find out if what we think is a good idea really is. And there are going to be some hard conversations, but also some easy conversations. But the good news is that the leadership on both boards, on both sides, have voted to take this next step, which I think is very important. And I am committed, as is Joe and our executive committees, to fully vet this concept. So let's keep an open mind as we go forward, and let's create an even stronger pro-business environment for our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Starting today, we're going to move quickly to define the specifics on how a new venture could look. Our goal is to move quickly and have a detailed plan by the first of the year. Very aggressive time frame. And I can tell you that each organization has committed to put the work in that's necessary to meet this aggressive timeline. I'd like to congratulate the Sun Corridor and Chamber leadership for agreeing to think creatively to meet the challenges of our future economy. Specifically, I want to recognize and thank the small working group of leaders that got us to this point for this important announcement. Susan Gray, Chair of Sun Corridor. Linda Welter, Chair of the Chamber of Commerce. Judy Rich, immediate past Chair of Sun Corridor. Lisa Lavallo, Chair of everything, Sun Corridor, Chamber of Commerce, and then Steve Hagan, former Chair of Sun Corridor. This, you deserve a big nod. We've been doing a lot of dinners and talking about this. So, and I'll just conclude with this. As I previously said, the last 20 years have been pretty successful, but the next 20 will be defined on how effectively we work cooperatively and how aggressively we deem to work to meet the challenges and opportunities facing us. I think our best times are ahead. Thank you. Well, shifting gears, this is the fun part. Periodically, Sun Corridor, we honor key individuals with something we call the Cornerstone Award. We don't give it out very often. The award is given to leaders who have significantly strengthened the Southern Arizona economy, sort of above and beyond type of effort. And today, I'm absolutely thrilled to recognize a key individual who has contributed significantly to our renaissance in the manufacturing sector. Remember I mentioned our strength a few minutes ago about manufacturing? That didn't happen by accident, folks. It takes the work of a lot of people, a lot of organizations. So I'll tell you a quick story. Nearly 10 years ago, we recognized we had a problem. We were losing deals, sort of like I talk about not having enough acreage. We were losing deals because we didn't have any speculative industrial space. We had little pieces here and there, but not the big space needed. So we saw that companies wanted to come here, but they were leaving. And frankly, in the Phoenix market, they were falling over this space that was being built, especially in the West Valley. We were losing companies by the bushels, saying, Joe, we'd like to be here, but we're not going to wait for you to build it or talk somebody into it. So we did a little bit of a pivot at Sun Corridor, and we went out and we were still recruiting companies, but we were looking for national developers that we could talk to come into Tucson, take a risk, and start building some product that we could put companies into. And on this journey, we met Jordan Schnitzer in San Diego. And we talked to you about coming in here and building speculative office space. Jordan has built, since that 10 years, multiple properties, and the rest is history. Today, Schnitzer Properties owns and operates over 1.3 million square feet of industrial buildings, and you have, I believe, 2 projects under construction right now. That's huge. This investment, folks, has changed the course of this community. Each investment that Jordan has put into this community has resulted in new companies and new jobs that we frankly otherwise would not have had. Jordan, on behalf of our community, Sun Corridor Inc. Board of Directors, I am thrilled and honored to recognize you with the Cornerstone Award. Jordan, will you come on up and accept that? Thank you for all you've done to advance our community. And I believe there's a little brochure on Schnitzer Properties, but Jordan, thank you very much. Let me present this to you real quick. I'll take a quick photo. Okay. It's heavy.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to thank Joe and all the staff of Sun Corridor. I live in Portland, and my father started our business in 1950. And I decided in 1990 when I took over to go to a decentralized, regionally empowered organization. So we now have offices in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Sacramento, Las Vegas, San Diego, Phoenix, and Tucson. I watched Tucson for years, and as it began to grow and have more critical mass, I thought this is about the time to start investing. Now, a cornerstone to our investing is finding markets that have strong demographic growth. I always assumed I wasn't as smart as my father, and I thought, geez, in terms of our acquisitions of properties, if we're in a market that's growing, then maybe that solid B will end up being a home run. And so we got here, and a key person that's not around today is Bill DeVito. He was a broker at CBRE, most of you know him, and he was trying to tell us about the strength of this market. And I was very taken by what he said. So we started buying some properties, industrial properties. Of the 33 million feet of property that we're honored to own and manage, 84% is industrial properties. And of those industrial properties, our average size tenant is 8,900 feet. So we have these much bigger national companies like Dermody, Panattoni, Van Trust, Lincoln Properties, whatever, that have hundreds of millions of feet. They're merchant builders, meaning they get outside money and they'll build a building, get it filled up and sell it and go on the next one, whereas we own for the long term. The philosophy that I've inculcated with our 300 wonderful folks I report to every day is you think about the community first. If you do what's right for the community, it's always been right for our business. So in looking at Tucson, I don't need to tell you what you know about how wonderful this community is. But what I am going to tell you is what I tell everybody else, because I am the biggest cheerleader. If I had Tucson pom-poms, and what I tell them is about the importance of the university, of Raytheon, Caterpillar coming here. But the key thing I always talk about is Sun Corridor. And we work in all these other cities. And yes, as Joe said, there are talking about here, there are multiple groups in all those other cities too, chambers of commerce and so forth and whatever. But I've never seen an organization as well organized and works on behalf cooperatively. Yes, there are different opinions. Yes, there's a tension between the city and the county, private, public, whatever, okay? But in the end, Sun Corridor brings them all together, and in the end, I've never seen a group as supportive of people coming to the community and helping get other businesses here to increase employment and quality of life issues, sustainable jobs. It's just incredible. I swear to you, I rave about the example of this to all these other municipalities, and I'm just so proud of you all. So we started buying properties here, and then we started developing. And I remember when Bill DeVito was talking to us, and we met with Joe and said there hadn't been a new tilt-up warehouse building in 10 years. And the absorption wasn't very strong over all those years. And I said, let's take a gamble. And we did that first building, and by gosh, we got it leased up. And then we did another one. And then something happened, which is good and bad. It attracted the attention of some national developers. So Trammell Crow came in, Lincoln Properties, Flint, whatever. So we had to wait them out to get their projects full. And we've now started 2 new projects. There are little flyers in there. And now we do all of our projects spec, meaning we don't wait for a tenant in advance. Because with the smaller size tenants we work with, they don't decide a year or 2 years in advance like a 500,000 foot Amazon building. And we like, and that's why we work with economic development folks everywhere, because we like to build these smaller tenants that serve the community day in, day out. And the last point I want to make real quickly, because we have some wonderful comments ahead. The congressman spoke earlier and the former ambassador. I want to talk about immigration. And it's interesting. Years ago, I was the speaker at UC Davis for their graduation. And this was 20 years ago. And there were a lot of factories closing up in the Northeast around the country due to the outsourcing. And I was concerned about the impact of that. And I went to a COA banker, now CB Richard Ellis, capital markets meeting. They showed a 50-year graph. And it showed those countries that were very homogenous, that weren't very welcoming to others. Japan, Italy, others, and so forth. And it showed the gross GDP of those countries over 50 years. And what it showed, because this country welcomed people, like my grandfather that came in 1905 from the Ukraine, grew up in a little hut with a dirt floored and outhouse, as poor as you can be, just like the mayor's family when you've talked to me about it, okay? This is the greatest country in the world. And I get so tired of the political rhetoric where everyone's beating everybody up about the problems we have. We've always had problems, always will. But you don't see people trying to get into Russia, China, all those other countries. And without solid, positive immigration, okay, there wouldn't be the opportunities for all of us and the growing communities that we need of the, really, of the 4,150 tenants that we wake up every day on bended knee to serve, and I'm so proud of our team here and the 300 other professionals we have, every one of them complains there's not enough staff. So I wish that people like you, Congressman from Ambassador, I wish you could suddenly get rid of the politics and tell us how to solve this, because it should be solved, because we need people coming to this country. So finally, thank you for this award. We're committed to continue to grow in Tucson, and just so appreciative of being part of the community. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Jordan. What a well-deserved award, and just so appreciate your investment in our community. So, one of our most important components of our region's economic success is Mexico. No surprise that that's our theme for today. In 2023, Mexico supplanted China as the #1 trade partner for the U.S. for the first time in more than 20 years. And while Mexico has been the long-standing #1 trade partner here in Arizona, this shift at the national level could have significant economic implications here for us in Southern Arizona. And so today's keynote speaker, Geronimo Gutierrez Fernandez, I was trying to roll the R, has held senior government positions under 5 Mexican presidents in the areas of finance, trade, national security, and diplomacy. Most recently, he served as Mexico's ambassador to the United States. And in that position, he played a prominent role in the negotiation of the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement, as we all know as the USMCA. And as the new Mexican administration began last week, as Joe mentioned, and our mayor was there for that really important event, today's luncheon is really excellent timing, right? This topic is just right for our region. As we talk about bringing Mexico to the forefront of Southern Arizona's agenda and discussing economic opportunities moving forward. So let's give a round of applause for Geronimo.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon. Muy buenas tardes. Well, it is a pleasure to be here in Tucson once again, and it is especially so because of Sun Corridor's annual luncheon. I want to thank Joe Snell, CEO and President. I also want to thank Laura Shaw for their kind invitation. I want to recognize Susan Gray, Sun Corridor's chair, and really all the people, institutions, and sponsors that have made this event possible. Major Romero, it's great to meet you. I hope you had your recent trip to Mexico was not only pleasant, but also productive. Congressman Cisco Manny, it has been some time since we last visited, and it's always great to see you. I know you're busy nowadays, so good luck there. And of course, I want to thank all of you for sharing part of your very busy days to join us this afternoon and to listen what we have to say. It is a memorable occasion because, as it has been mentioned, we celebrate Sun Corridor's 20th anniversary. This is 2 decades of driving business investment into South Arizona, of improving regional competitiveness and articulating public and private stakeholders. And all of this, I think, very importantly, with always keeping a global perspective. We're also on the 30th anniversary of the single most important thing that our countries have accomplished together, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement and later the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And it's a good time to take stock of where we are and, more importantly, where we seem to be going. As it was mentioned, Mexico became the United States' top trading partner last year. And this, I think, just reflects the vitality and the importance of our economic ties. But it's also true that we face clear challenges as we go into USMCA review, essentially starting next year, and also as part of a much broader agenda that includes dealing with immigration, with security, with the problem, this very serious problem around fentanyl. We're dealing with water at the border, and all of this, by the way, in a very complex geopolitical setting. So my aim today is to provide you with an overview of where we are in the U.S.-Mexico relationship, especially its trade and investment component, then talk briefly about Mexico and its current political and economic situation. And we will have time also for a short Q&A, which I welcome. I expect my remarks might incite some questions, comments, or criticisms. And I think especially it'll be important as we look how all of this fits into the objectives of Arizona, Southern Arizona, and Sun Corridor's members, which is where we're really here today. So where is the U.S.-Mexico relationship? Allow me to take a few minutes to provide some historical perspective. And I just think it's important because it allows to capture really the moment we're in. 2 years ago, in 2022, we celebrated the bicentennial of the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Sure enough, both governments, as it can only be expected, used the occasion to display a lot of optimism about it, about the future of the relationship. I wrote then a short essay and explained that, in my view, the U.S.-Mexico relationship had gone through 3 phases during those 200 years, and that we had just started a 4th one a few years ago. The first phase, really from Mexico's independence basically to the Second World War, as I'm sure all of you know, was essentially a period of confrontation between our countries. With few exceptions, the major events were disputes, if not outright conflicts. And it's sufficient to say that we went from the U.S. invasion of Mexico and the consequent loss of half our territory in 1848 to Mexico's expropriation of the oil industry in 1938, and that affected U.S. interests. So, and many other hard episodes in between. The Second World War was an inflection point. It gave rise to a second phase. The United States needed Mexico for its security and also its raw materials and labor for the war effort. President Roosevelt visited President Ávila Camacho in Monterrey in 1943. It was the first presidential visit in over 35 years. And in his speech, FDR spoke about the American bloodshed in the attack of Pearl Harbor, obviously, but also of the Mexican blood in the hands of Nazi Germany in the sinking of the Mexican oil tanker El Potrero del Llano off the coast of the Atlantic. But perhaps more important, Roosevelt spoke probably for the first time, and I quote, about the mutual interdependence of our joint economic resources. In addition to these ties, economic ties, we began to understand at that time our essentially shared interests during the Cold War. This permitted a new and careful political balance between the United States and Mexico, which actually lasted for decades. This was also the time when the New York Times correspondent Alan Riding coined the term distant neighbors in 1984, the title of his New York bestseller book. That title reflected the very odd condition of two nations that were, yes, increasingly interdependent, but that in reality knew little about each other and distrusted quite a bit each other. Another inflection point came much faster than the previous one in the 90s with the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that moved us to a third phase. This was the first trade agreement in history between a developing country and a developed country, an agreement which drastically changed Mexico and its relation with the United States and actually created the North American relationship. NAFTA, in many ways, it's a period in which we began to build a relationship of strategic partners. It was President Carlos Salinas de Gortari who defined the new terms of that relationship in stating, and I quote, he said, "Mexico is seeking trade, not aid this time." The agreement came into effect in 1994, and as some of you might remember, the same day the Zapatista National Liberation Army, a guerrilla essentially, burst into Mexico's southern state of Chiapas and captured all of the international attention, exactly the same day that NAFTA began. Perhaps this coincidence was only a preamble of Mexico's difficult struggle with modernizing itself and projecting itself globally and internationally. And I believe that this struggle, unfortunately, is something that continues to this day, and I will refer to that when I speak about Mexico. That phase lasted roughly 30 years, ups and downs, obviously, but I think the trend line was positive overall. In addition of the economic relationship taking off, we began to deal, I think, much more constructively with complex issues like immigration, security, and many other, water of the border again. And we began to deal with them not so much pointing fingers at each other, but assuming that and recognizing that we have a shared responsibility in dealing with these common problems. We were also able to overcome very difficult specific periods, like the effects of the terrible terrorist attacks on the United States of 2001 and the effect that had on the Mexico border. And there is no other country in the world that experienced, as Mexico, those consequences. In the end, I think, it took time and lots of work, but we managed to strike a balance between security and efficiency on the border. And that objective is very much present today, very much important for the trade relationship. The renegotiation of NAFTA into USMCA under President Donald Trump and his overall approach to Mexico and their relationship was a major disruption and brought us to a fourth phase, roughly between 2017 and 18. For the first time in almost 30 years, what was then and is still now the backbone of this relationship, which is a North American Free Trade Agreement, was questioned. The official U.S. narrative took a 180-degree turn because Mexico went from being a strategic and valued trading partner under previous administrations on both sides of the aisle, by the way, to a neighbor that had surely, and I quote, tricked and abused Americans during NAFTA negotiations, and moreover, was deliberately sending criminals into the United States. The hard work, I think the cool heads and pragmatism of people on all sides, on the United States, Canada, and Mexico, allow us to prevail. And thankfully, in June 2020, the USMCA went into effect. So here's my first takeaway that I want to leave you with. Our trade and investment relationship has really shown extraordinary resilience in the face of very important challenges. And the reason, and it's quite simple, is because it's critical to the economic well-being, at least, of the three North American partners. And that still very much remains valid today. During those years, we also lost completely the notion of shared responsibility when dealing with immigration, which was earlier mentioned, or drug trafficking, or fentanyl, or many other things that we face. And most Mexicans perceived then that the United States was no longer willing to work with Mexico, but rather just bully Mexico into working. Not surprisingly, the percentage of Mexicans who had a positive view of the United States fell from 66% in 2015 to 29% 2 years later in 2017. And according to the Pew, this is according to the Pew Research Center. By the way, it's now back to 60, thank God. It has improved recently. But moving again into the trade component, getting USMCA done was a very unlikely outcome, and we have to recognize that. And to be sure, the final provisions did not leave anybody fully satisfied. And I think that's because it reflects that that was the only deal possible. What is, and I often get asked, what has USMCA been successful, and where is it going? And, you know, there's a huge debate about that, but let me tell you 6 things that I think it has accomplished very successful and are relevant to our discussion today. It left our trade essentially tariff-free. It maintained a fair degree of investor protection, meaning a Mexican company can invest in Tucson and be protected, or an American company can invest in the United States and be protected by the law, which is important. It strengthened labor and environmental components, making them part actually of the agreement and not a side agreement. It left intact our agricultural trade. Some of you might remember, but when NAFTA was being negotiated, the single most sensitive sector was the ag sector. And this time around with USMCA, the ag sector on both sides were great advocates of getting and maintaining the trade agreement. They essentially went to the politicians and said, just let us work. We're doing fine. We're exchanging a lot of trade on the ag sector. It also modernized important disciplines because we did not have, when NAFTA was there, e-commerce, so we need to introduce e-commerce or intellectual property. And one more thing is, it included 2 important chapters, one on small and medium enterprises, and another one on competitiveness. Why is that important? Because one of the criticisms of NAFTA, and I think a valid one, was it was mostly benefiting very big global companies and not small enterprises. And that chapter that we have now in USMCA is precisely intended to address that problem. And the other one, the competitiveness challenge, was we have trade. We no longer have trade barriers among ourselves. But we need to make sure that we remain competitiveness and look at issues that affect regional competitiveness. And I'll just give you one example, which I had a conversation earlier about, ports of entry. We need to make sure that our joint infrastructure and ports of entry at the border is efficient, so trucks can come both sides, northbound and southbound, quickly without costing money to the companies. So, as I have said, USMCA is not perfect, but it works. And there's plenty of data to support that. I'll just give you, two data points. One is the Business Roundtable estimated in 2018, that's the last year for which we have numbers, that trade with Mexico supports anywhere between 5 to 6 million jobs in the United States. And as it was earlier mentioned, just last year, the Arizona-Mexico trade was $20 billion, accounting for around a third of all of the state exports and roughly around $8.5 billion worth of exports, of Arizona exports into Mexico. So let me talk quickly about the present geopolitical context and the changes in supply lines that are extremely important. We are moving into what analysts describe as a multipolar world, and what they call fragmented trade or globalization, which is a fancy term. We can discuss for hours why is that, but the 2 points that I think means are very simple. One is trade policy will no longer be only about reciprocity. This is about making trade deals. It will be about realignment. Trade policy will be aligned with geopolitical and security objectives in the next decades. The second is that a multipolar world, in proximity, its importance on different dimensions. Proximity in geography, obviously, language, politics, culture, even the time zone. And that is why I'm not surprised that, as Joe pointed in the survey, proximity to Mexico is an important variable. Certainly not the only one, but it's an important variable. Nearshoring, if the United States is going to be less dependent on China, at least one path will be via Mexico, most likely. And I emphasize, it's not the only one, but at least one will be via Mexico. Why? And I'll point to just a number. Over the last 30 years, we have not only traded a lot among ourselves, but we have developed a highly integrated supply chain system and economic ties. And the value of U.S. contents in imports from Mexico is 40%. What does that mean? Or to put it in perspective, this figure is 25% for Canada, no ill intended to our Canadian friends. It's 4% for China, 3% for the European Union, and 3% from Brazil. So North American trade consists mainly, or very importantly, of intermediate goods where parts and components cross the border back and forth several times before they end up finally being assembled. In addition, the U.S. is engaged in a nearshoring strategy, and we can talk more about that, about the CHIPS Act, about Executive Order 1407 that was published by the President. In the North American Leader Summits, the last meeting when the President met was, set very clear goals in coordinating semiconductor supply chains, expanding North American critical minerals and resources and reserves, cooperating on semiconductors, ICT, biomanufacturing, and other key and logistic industries. So I had mentioned nearshoring which is a common term used now, is real. It's happening, at least to some extent. And I think whether it will fully materialize or not depends on a series of factors, but let me just touch upon two. I mentioned that we experienced a turning point at the beginning of a new stage just a few years in the relationship. And this stage, it's summarized as stronger economic interdependence, which is what I've tried to explain over my previous comments. It's much more evident, much more stronger, and there are much more opportunities. And I think that's where this, what Southern Arizona is doing, what Suncor is doing, fits perfectly well. But I'm concerned about two things. One is misguided economic nationalism in the context of highly polarized societies, both in the United States and in Mexico. This is not particular to any one country. And the other one is that issues such as immigration, security, are not properly addressed and could derail these opportunities. So in short, second takeaway, if I may, is I think we have never had in the last at least 50 or 60 years a better opportunity to grow our economic ties, to increase our economic competitiveness, and to strengthen the overall economic relation in North America. But I'm also convinced that we have never had a situation in which the respective domestic political contexts are as likely as it is now to derail that opportunity. And the most immediate challenge, something that it was already mentioned, I believe, by Joe, is USMCA, which will be reviewed essentially starting next year. The agreement is set to expire in 16 years, right? After its date of entry, which was July 2020. Unless, and I quote, each party confirms in written form it wishes to remain in the agreement for another 16-year period. The USMCA review is meant to be a technical exercise that will look at technical variables and economic variables. And I think that if people look at the numbers, they're there. They confirm essentially a good story, not without challenges, but essentially a good story for the United States, for Canada, and Mexico. But it would be unwise to think that the process can be immune to political context and we're just going to go out automatically through it. And that is why people and institutions that believe in the importance of this relation should be active, especially in the next few months, to make sure that this story, which is essentially positive, is there. So let me talk about Mexico. And one needs to be careful when commenting on one's country abroad, especially as a former diplomat. But I think we must address the elephant in the room. And I really want to do that also. I think it'll be to the benefit of our discussion. And so what is going on in Mexico? And I'm sure you have a lot of news and a lot of different stories about what is going on. The best way to describe the last 6 years, I think, is to say that the now former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO, pushed for and has been largely successful in achieving a regime change in Mexico, which is not a term that should be used lightly. This change, broadly speaking, has implied a few things. One is an increased role of government in the economy. That's something that he and his party deeply believes in, and it's translated in different things, in regulation and ownership of state-owned enterprises having a much more important role. There has been a rebalancing between labor and capital. The administration has pushed a worker-centered policy, and that has changed labor relations in Mexico. There has been a push with emblematic infrastructure projects, and perhaps you heard of the Mayan train and other key projects. And there has been a foreign policy that, in my view, and this is an opinion, has been largely defensive in the sense that it's based on internal strength and not so much on international engagement. Somewhere between 40% and 50% of the population supported this change in Mexico, and that's important. Claudia Sheinbaum obtained 50% of the vote just in this past election, and is now the first woman president of Mexico, and I think we must all wish her well. Her party has legislative majorities, constitutional majorities in both the House and the Senate, and roughly 20 plus out of the 30 governorships. So it was a very important, it's been a seismic change in Mexico's political system, something that we had not lived for quite some time. Now, how is it this is possible? Let me remain a diplomat and let's just say that there's a huge debate going on whether this is a good thing or not. And perhaps you heard some of it, and I'd be happy to answer some questions. But the most important part, I think, in my view, is that the question is this sustainable? Because this is really what affects the relationship between Mexico and the United States, and Mexico and Arizona, and Mexico and Tucson. So I'll just offer some reflections. And the short answer is, in my view, again, this being an opinion, it's not sustainable. And I'll emphasize 4 points just briefly on my final comments. One is fiscally. From a fiscal point of view, the government is now roughly with a 7% deficit, or fiscal deficit of GDP, and it's the largest since we've seen since the 80s at least. And I think that the expenditure and income and expenditure trajectories are they won't converge, right? Then it's energy, which is super important. It's not clear that Mexico can continue to provide the power, talking about Susan about electric power, that economic activity will require. And there's a whole debate about how to go and approach that. Today, the president actually outlined its energy policy. I have not had a chance to see it, but especially energy that includes clean sources, which is what most companies are now demanding to have. Infrastructure. there's a great need of Mexico to have additional infrastructure, to really take advantage of what we're seeing in this context, and the investment, as Joe has said, that might be coming into North America and part of that into Mexico. We just don't have sufficient infrastructure that is needed for the companies into the future. And then security. The single most important threat to Mexico and to its business environment, to be sure, on the medium, I would say now, and then on the medium and long term, it's security. And the criticism against security policy of the last administration has ranged from having no real strategy to at least implicitly not confronting organized crime in order to avoid the bloodshed. And that's a problem. We have a huge challenge that needs to be addressed. And I'll be happy to talk more on the questions and answer. And the final point, just to close, is, again, relations to North America. Is our relationship sustainable with North America from what we're seeing? President López Obrador, and I believe his successor, understand the importance of the relationship with the United States and Canada. There's no question about it. For someone that was absolutely critical of the North American Free Trade Agreement, it is refreshing to see López Obrador and now his successor talk about supply chains and North America and economic integration. We would have not seen that 20 years ago, not even 10 years ago. Okay? That's very positive. But I don't think, again, this being an opinion, that, or at least it's unclear, whether they see it not only as necessary, but actually as a strategic opportunity it implies. And that's a big question mark for me. The narrative right now about relations from Mexico with the United States and North America is the correct one. Make no mistake, it's there, it's the right narrative. But I think there's a gap between the narrative and what is really going on in two ways. One is, are domestic policies in Mexico conducive to the seizing this opportunity or not? Big debate. On infrastructure, on energy, on security, on the judiciary reform that perhaps you have heard of it. And the other one is very simple. Can we continue to accumulate tensions on the relationship, whether it's on fentanyl, China, immigration, or something else, while we continue to have this very strong trade relationship? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's going to be increasingly difficult. And by the way, it's going to be increasingly difficult independently of who wins here the election in November. So I don't want to paint a critical panorama, but I think it's an important challenge. So I've talked a lot. I'll conclude. Let me just conclude with the following. It was actually Ronald Reagan who first proposed a North American agreement in 1979 when he was running for president. And I'm going to quote him because I think it's a wonderful quote to conclude. And at that time, he said, "It is no accident that this unmatched potential for progress and prosperity exists in three countries with such a long-standing heritage of free government. A developing closeness among Canada, Mexico, and the United States, a North American accord," first time it was actually put out there, "would permit achievement of that potential in each country beyond that which I believe any of them, strong as they are, could accomplish in the absence of such cooperation. In fact, the key to our future security," this is U.S. future security, "may lie in both Mexico and Canada becoming much stronger countries than they are today. A developing closeness between the United States, Canada, and Mexico would serve notice," and this is very important in the present context, "would serve notice and to foe and friend alike that we are prepared for a long haul, looking outward again and confident of our future, that together we're going to create jobs, generate new fortunes of wealth for many, and provide a legacy for the children of each of our countries. Ronald Reagan, 1979. And I think he got it right. And I think he has the right idea, especially when we see what is going on geopolitically. So thank you for having me here. I hope you enjoy these comments, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Geronimo. This has been fantastic, and I could listen to you all afternoon.
I
This
ran
is
out of it.
incredible. We just have time for a couple of questions,
Sure.
so if you don't mind,
Did I extend the mic?
we'll grab a seat. So, you know, I really just want to dig into the energy policy.
Sure.
No, I'm kidding. I don't think everyone else
No,
wants to
yeah.
dig into energy policy. But you talked about a number of things that I'd love to drill into. But maybe to start with, you talked about the evolution from NAFTA to USMCA, and you talked about the impact to the agriculture sector. Could you talk about maybe more broadly some of the other sectors? Which ones will benefit? Which ones will have more challenges as we've made this evolution?
Sure. I think that the sectors that can really benefit from this North American moment is, high level manufacturing, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, electronics will continue to be there, and IT and communications. I think those are sectors that are very relevant for both countries and ones in which both governments are focusing to support. As I mentioned, you have the CHIPS Act, which actually has a very important component to support the United States. I think it's $500 million in the next 5 years to support the development of joint cooperation on those sectors between the United States and Mexico. I think those, and critical minerals, which are relevant, obviously, in the Arizona-Sonora context and what is being developed there in Sonora.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you think about, our two countries working together, and obviously we're focused on economic development today, what can we do to work together to kind of solve some of our issues and really focus on growth, bringing growth to our region?
I mentioned earlier some of that, and I think it's a few relevant things. First, I want to congratulate, and I'm being honest about it, Sun Corridor for the work that it's doing, and again for having this global perspective. Not, to be perfectly honest, not always the economic interests of Arizona or Mexico or U.S. of Mexico are going to be clearly aligned. That's not the case, and I won't. But by and large, that will be the case. What are the important things that I think could be done? First, number one, I think cities and states from the United States actually punch above their weight in Mexico when trying to bring business. There's always been talk about an asymmetry between Mexico and the United States, and that asymmetry just is reflected there. So the work that Sun Corridor can do to promote, joint promotion of the region, bringing investment from Mexico into the region, and just visiting with authorities there consistently will prove useful. And let me emphasize something that I think it's very important. I'm Mexican, and for the last 20 years, I've been promoting U.S. investment or foreign investment into Mexico. That's natural to some extent. But I want to mention something that I think is very relevant for Tucson, which is Mexican companies are increasingly seeking to invest in the United States and set operations in the United States and actually hedge and diversify their risk. And I think that's something that should be taking advantage of cities. The other point is the border. When Joe was showing the slides about what people think makes southern Arizona attractive, proximity to Mexico, that's certainly the case, but it's even more specific. It's being a border region. People are interested in what is going on, people worldwide, in Mexico, the U.S., essentially because the border region, in spite of the challenges that it does have, it's a powerhouse. And that is why you're getting people that want to come, let me call it, not only to Mexico or to the border region between Mexico and the United States. And I think that's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about supply chain and nearshoring, and we're seeing rising tensions in China and elsewhere. How do you see that playing into our relationship and again, potential growth?
I mean, let me tell you briefly about China. So if there's one thing that is largely bipartisan in the U.S. right now, is concern about China. And we can debate whether that is right or wrong, but it's a fact. And my inclination is to think that that's a very, it's going to be a fairly permanent or long process. It's not something that will go away. And the reason, and I want to be respectful, is that the perception that China did not play by the rules everybody else played worldwide on trade seems to be true. Right? And people are concerned, and moreover, when there's military and strategic competition involved. So why do I mention this? Because I think that, number one, China is going to be a critical part of the discussion on USMCA review. The United States, irrespective of who wins, is going to want to have Mexico be much more helpful in addressing China than in the past. And I think that's certainly going to be there. And then the other thing is logistics and supply chain traceability is going to become investment and supply chain traceability is going to be very much part of what I think is the future of sort of the customs agenda between Mexico and the United States. People are going to want to know where every single component of products is coming from, and that's what brings us an opportunity right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're really honored to have you come and share your thoughts and your deep experience between our countries. And so can you all join me in thanking him for being here?
Thank you so much. I hope I didn't extend too much, no?
So great.
It went well?
Very well. Thank you so much. What a great luncheon we've had today, right? Yeah. As I started the comments today, we always bring in world-class speakers, and of course today we topped it off. Really fantastic, and the theme is that there's a lot of growth opportunities, a lot of opportunities with Mexico, a lot of opportunities right here in southern Arizona, and I think just to maybe highlight one that we need to obviously focus on in the short term now is this potential alliance between the Tucson Metro Chamber and Sun Corridor, Inc., and I'm excited about where that's headed. And we also know that we have a lot of work to do, but it's all about making ourselves more competitive, bringing ourselves together to have one voice and to be more effective as a business leadership group. And so thank you, Michael, for your partnership in that. So thanks to everybody for being here today and for participating. This is like really fantastic that we can get this many business leaders together to have this important conversation. So I appreciate you being here and have a great day. Thank you.